The fight for control of the House and Senate comes down to voters in November. Welcome to this special Faith Nation in Washington. I'm Caitlin Burke. As Election Day comes closer, midterm races are taking shape. And when it comes to endorsements, former President Donald Trump is playing a major role in the Republican primaries. CBN's Matt Galka takes a look at the impact he's having on the races.
The primary wins and the losses are starting to add up for former President Donald Trump. And while his word still goes very far in the Republican Party, his king-making ability might not be as ironclad this primary season.
You're going to send Dr. Oz to fight for you in the U.S. Senate? I want to pick somebody that's going to win, and this man is going to win. Come on. There is no rhino in America who has thrown in her lot with the radical left more than Liz Cheney. Terrible. She has gone crazy.
The former president has not shied away from weighing in on some of the country's most pivotal races. And the question over how much influence he still brings to the table continues to be thoroughly dissected. One clear conclusion is that although Trump's blessing hasn't led to automatic wins, that doesn't mean it's not helpful. Trump picked up a big win early in the primary season with his endorsement of Ohio Senate candidate J.D. Vance. Vance was floundering in a crowded GOP field before Trump's welcome involvement likely carried Vance across the finish line for the primary win.
I've absolutely got to thank the 45th, the President of the United States, Donald J. Trump.
Come November, the Ohio race will be seen as highly significant because the winner could go a long way towards determining control of the Senate chamber on Capitol Hill. He picked up more wins in Arkansas, North Carolina, and Georgia with Senate candidates he endorsed, but Pennsylvania's high-profile race put his influence to the test. Trump's backing of doctor-turned-television celebrity Mehmet Oz in the Pennsylvania Senate primary drew some criticism from voters.
I really think he's getting some bad information on that.
It's too Hollywood. I don't trust it. I could never know enough about him realistically to know if that is who I would want to vote for. I couldn't do it.
Oz found himself locked in a dead heat with opponent David McCormick. It led to a recount lasting into June, with McCormick eventually conceding. Then came a deja vu moment when the former president saw a repeat of 2020 defeat in Georgia. Trump backed challengers to incumbents Governor Brian Kemp and Secretary of State Brad Raffensperger. Political observers saw those endorsements as revenge plays, since both Kemp and Raffensperger went against Trump's calls to challenge Joe Biden's 2020 win in the state. After both won their primaries against Trump's preferred candidates, Cole Muzio, the president of the Frontline Policy Council, saw it as a move-on moment for Georgia voters.
All we're talking about is yesterday. We're losing the fight today, and we're certainly going to lose it tomorrow. And so we've got to focus on principles. We got to get back to that space. And look, Donald Trump is still a very popular figure in the Republican Party and the conservative movement. He had a great 4 years. But I think the people around this country and the conservative movement are looking and saying, look, we can appreciate him without being obedient to him.
Still, Trump has more wins than losses, and that record is definitely important for the former president, according to CBN's chief political analyst, David Brody.
He does care about the win-loss record for sure, but let's make no mistake. I mean, Donald Trump is powerful within the Republican Party. There's not even a question about that. And this has nothing to do with any sort of staying power in 2024. In other words, for people to interpret these results and say, well, wait a minute, maybe his election 2020 stuff isn't going to quite work in 2024. I mean, that's hogwash.
More primaries remain as the midterm elections approach in November, with the former president expected to play a big role down the stretch.
What I'm seeing is that Trump's popularity within the Republican Party isn't easily transferable to other candidates. I think President Trump himself is still popular, and voters are thankful for various things that he has done or continues to do. But that doesn't necessarily mean that Republican voters are looking to Trump to tell them exactly what they should do and who they should vote for in every race.
It's worth keeping tabs on how many of Trump's candidates voters are supporting, because it could indicate how much support he has as the former president potentially eyes another bid at the White House. Matt Galka, CBN News.
Come Election Day, Republicans are hoping to shift the balance of power on Capitol Hill with all 435 House seats up for grabs. A so-called red wave could make its way through the lower chamber. Capitol Hill correspondent Matt Galka spoke with chief political analyst David Brody about the races to watch.
Well, just about halfway through the primary election season with a big midterm on the horizon. To talk about it all, CBN's chief political analyst, David Brody. David, we'll start here. We're not going to age ourselves, but
please don't.
You've seen some midterms. You've been around the block with this. Mm-hmm. Every poll seemingly in the world has a red wave on the horizon, at least in the House.
Yeah.
Is that the way you see it?
100%. There's going to be a red wave. There is no indication. Poll after poll shows this cratering for Democrats, not just in the House, potentially in the Senate as well. I say potentially. Obviously, it's a whole different dynamic in the Senate, as you know, and it's a statewide race and everything. But there's a real possibility. Not only could the Republicans, take back the House, but this could easily go to a possibly 2, 3, 4 victory margin where the Republicans get the Senate as well.
It's seemingly the midterms are a referendum on the party that's in power. Mm-hmm. Do you see the Republicans, can they still fumble this at this point? Or is there just, is the economy just in such, the inflation, the gas prices, is there no way they can play defense for Democrats?
It's a great question. I got to tell you, the default answer is absolutely Republicans could potentially fumble this because they're really good at fumbling from the past. We've seen this where they kind of basically shoot themselves in the foot. In this case, they would have to have multiple shootings of each individual toe on the foot because there's so much going wrong for Democrats. So I don't think it'll happen this time.
Well, let's switch from the House to the Senate, where the dynamics are a little bit different. I mean, the razor-thin margins in the Senate as is. Yeah. But so we'll shift to a state that has razor-thin margin elections, and we'll talk about Pennsylvania. That primary is already decided. You had President Trump back Mehmet Oz, the successful surgeon turned reality star, TV star, and now politician, against Lieutenant Governor John Fetterman. How do you see that one playing out? Because, that has been, with the recount on the GOP side and Fetterman's health troubles, what happens when we get to the midterm?
Well, I have to tell you, there's going to be a lot of fascinating Senate races, and I'm a bit of a geek when it comes to politics, okay? But this is the one I'm going to be watching out of all of them. Look, I think Oz has a real shot to win in Pennsylvania. Now, what's interesting here is that Fetterman is a very unusual candidate, right? He's a guy that's coming in the hoodie, he's got the jeans, he's kind of like he's not your typical Democrat politician for sure. So he kind of has that blue collar appeal. So that'll be interesting. Having said that, he's got some problems in the minority community. And what I mean by that is he's got to get out the suburbs, the inner cities in Philadelphia and in Pittsburgh, but definitely in Philadelphia. But there's been some things in his past that the minority community is a bit skeptical on. I don't want to get into all of it now, but it had to do with when he was mayor in a small town. Bottom line is that he's got some work to do in the inner cities. And if he doesn't get the turnout there, he's going to be in big trouble.
Let's switch to Georgia, to the south. You have former NFL running back Herschel Walker going up against Raphael Warnock, who won a special election. The Democrats' Senate control went through Georgia last year. So what happens this time around?
Well, this is going to be obviously a very tight race. There are folks that believe, from a political prognosticator standpoint, that Herschel Walker may have the advantage over Warnock. I'm not necessarily buying it. The folks I'm talking to on the ground in Georgia suggest that because the Georgia economy, let's start with the economy overall in America. Bad. This just in. Really bad. 72 font and bold. But in Georgia, it's not as bad as other states. And so that could help Warnock to a degree. Once again, not the best economy, but if you look at the top performing economies, if you will, if you consider in this economy performing as any sort of standard, Georgia actually, like I said, one of the better economies right now. That could help Warnock, could hurt Herschel Walker. So I wouldn't be surprised if Democrats actually held on to that seat. Having said that, the Stacey Abrams factor comes into play. She's running for governor against Kemp. So I think I don't think you're going to see Abrams. If Abrams wins, my guess is Warnock's going to win as well. If Warnock loses, I think you're going to see Abrams lose. I think they're a package deal on it.
One of the states feeling one of the tightest squeezes in the country is Nevada. Highest gas prices, the housing market is, or the cost of housing through the roof. That looks like for Democrat Senator Catherine Cortez Masto, she is supposed to be the most vulnerable in this election cycle. Is she going to be able to fend off a challenger in that one, or is that
where Republicans are like, yep, we're going to win that right.
This is the number one, the one that Republicans really believe they can get. Mastro is in big trouble, not just from an economic standpoint, but the voter electorate, if you will, has changed a lot in Nevada since she came on board in 2016. There are a lot of new voters. Half of the voters that will be voting this time around are new. That means she has to kind of, in essence, reintroduce herself to them. So I think Republicans are looking at that. They're looking at the economy. Adam Waxalt, will have Trump's backing if he ends up winning. But the bottom line is, with a Waxalt versus Mastro race, that probably puts Republicans in a pretty good spot to win in Nevada.
We're halfway through this primary season. Seems like every Tuesday you have a group of new states that are casting their ballots for primaries. In the second half, as we approach November, what are you looking at? What are some races around the country that we should keep our eye on?
Well, if we keep our eyes on the Senate real quick, Mark Kelly is in some trouble in Arizona. I mean, Democrats really are in trouble kind of across the board in many of these states. There are about 10 or so that are really tough for them right now. But Mark Kelly will be in trouble in Arizona. We'll see what happens there. We'll see how that shakes out. Arizona, once again, feels a little bit like Georgia to me. It's a very unsettled situation out there. We're not quite sure what's up or down, especially when it comes to some of what's happened from the election standpoint and some of the everything from voting irregularities out there. So hard to predict. The one I'm looking forward to, of course, is Liz Cheney in August. And I say look forward to just from a popcorn eating standpoint. I mean, I just think it'll be fascinating to see how much she potentially loses by, or can she win? Now, the only way she's going to win, look, here's the bottom line. She's not going to get much Republican support out there, but in Wyoming, it's an open primary. Democrats can vote for the Republican candidate in Wyoming. So if she gets a lot of Democrat support, she could end up potentially winning. Don't think that's going to happen, but I'm very curious to see, because that will be kind of like the cherry on top for Trump. You know, Trump has gone around the country and tried to pick off some of these folks that voted, for his impeachment, and he's been very, very successful, obviously. Cheney, obviously, would be the crowning jewel of all of that. I expect her to lose in August.
Primary season might seem never-ending to some, but for nerds like us, it's quite the time.
Keep it going.
As we head into November. David Brody, CBN's chief political analyst, thank you for joining us,
Thanks,
David.
Matt.
Targeting the TikTok generation for political gain and winning over young voters with short videos when Faith Nation returns. From dance videos to cooking tutorials or cute baby content, 1 billion monthly active users tune in to TikTok. Tens of millions of them are in their 20s. Armed with that knowledge, the Democratic Party has launched a presence on the social media platform targeting Gen Z. David Brody reports on the DNC's latest strategy to prevent that red wave predicted for November.
Today's hot social media landscape has a lot of top contenders: Twitter, Facebook, Snapchat, Instagram, YouTube. But the one making big waves is TikTok, with more than 1 billion active monthly users.
Oh, hello. Here's the Democratic message. We want a free and fair election.
A platform where anybody can make short videos and spin current events, politics, and any issue the way they want. Mark Meckler, the former CEO of Parler, lays out the challenge ahead.
The difficulty for the American people is to understand what's true and what's not. We have access to more information than, frankly, we've ever had in all of American history.
As usual in politics, the battle is on to win the spin game, especially among the early 20s Gen Z crowd. They're known to be politically active, and there's tens of millions of them out there. So far, Democrats have a sizable advantage. Given this is the first midterm cycle in the TikTok era, the DNC recently launched on the app, and they're getting more than 2 million views per week. Caroline Levitt is a Republican running for Congress in New Hampshire. At age 25, she is a member of Gen Z and would be the youngest person elected to Congress if she wins. She understands the battleground.
I want your viewers to understand just how significant and frankly dangerous this is, that the DNC is now utilizing TikTok. This is the #1 app for my generation of Americans. It's where they go to seek their news. My generation is not going to go and fact check these videos. We've lost all critical thinking skills because of social media. So the Democrats are capitalizing on that. They're going to continue to brainwash my generation of voters, which is why it is so important that we push back on this.
And while the Republican National Committee still has no TikTok page, the White House is bringing in influential TikTokers to give them talking points on how to discuss things like rising gas prices. 18-year-old Ellie Zeeler has more than 10 million followers.
Why is gas so expensive, and why is the United States inflation rate at a 4-time decade high? I had the opportunity to ask the White House why gas down the street is $7, and here's what they said.
Regarding Ukraine, the Biden administration turned to Aaron Parnas, since he's a powerful TikTok influencer in this area, with live streams that garner millions of views.
For the first 15 minutes or so, they briefed us on what the United States is doing to help European allies. And then the remaining 30 minutes, we were able to ask questions like journalists about concepts that our viewers, or questions that our viewers wanted answers to.
One criticism here is that the White House is engaging in state-run propaganda through the younger generation's top social media platform. Democrats, however, see it as a strategy poised to pay political dividends.
Is that a genius Democratic move or a Lord help our country movement, a moment, if you will, that the White House is bringing in influential TikTokers?
It is wise of them because they understand that these sites are powerful. They recognize that they are winning with my demographic of voters, and they realize that the Republican Party, our side of the aisle, is doing nothing to change that.
Another complication is that many Republicans are reluctant to get on TikTok because of its connection to China and privacy concerns. That personal data could be stolen. So instead, they turn to Instagram and Snapchat, two other healthy, viable alternatives. But what about old school campaigning? How effective can that still be?
If you don't go on TikTok, you can do this other ways. You have to kind of double up the efforts on other platforms or other ways to get Gen Zers in. In other words, that's the strategy.
Yeah, absolutely. Get on all of the other sites and then meet these voters where they are in person, right? There's no more effective campaign tool or no more persuasive method you can win a voter over by looking them in the eyes.
At this point for the GOP, winning over voters on the issues and in-person campaigning the old-fashioned way may be their best bet, because when it comes to TikTok, it's no contest. David Brody, CBN News, Washington.
From best-selling author to Senate hopeful, we sit down with Ohio candidate J.D. Vance next. He's the best-selling author of Hillbilly Elegy, and he's never held public office. But Republican commentator J.D. Vance has his finger on the pulse of the American people. And with the 2020 midterm elections coming up, he's set his sights on Washington. Here's Abigail Robertson with more.
Ohio Senate hopeful J.D. Vance says it's time for strong leaders in Washington, and he believes if elected, that's what he'll be.
And I just feel like people don't actually have anybody that stands up and fights for them, that's willing to speak loudly and powerfully on the issues that they care about.
His key issues: securing the southern border, bringing jobs back to the U.S., election security, and breaking up big tech.
I think people are really worried about censorship. They're really worried about whether at their workplaces or on social media, can they actually speak their mind? Can they speak their conservative Christian values without being shut down?
J.D. Vance joins us.
While Vance has never held public office, he is a longtime GOP commentator and author of the best-selling book, Hillbilly Elegy.
I think very open about my views on a whole range of issues for a long time now.
At one point, Vance was a media darling for his criticism of Donald Trump in 2016. Then it turned on him when Vance voted for the president's re-election in 2020.
Trump is the leader of the party, very popular among Republican primary voters.
Vance says he wears the media attacks as a badge of honor.
I really think the reason the media is attacking me is because they recognize that I'm a threat to the dominant ideas that are out there.
And tells CBN News while he's changed his mind on Trump, Other views remain the same.
At the end of the day, I think I've been very consistent in my view that we need to have a strong manufacturing policy in this country. We need to allow conservatives and Christians to actually live their values, to pass those values on to their children. We need to ensure that we're not teaching our kids to hate America in American schools. We need to ensure that our southern border is controlled.
Current Senator Rob Portman, known as a bipartisan dealmaker in Washington, has played a key role in the recent passage of the Senate's infrastructure bill. That's a legacy Vance says he wouldn't necessarily continue.
I think the mistake that Republicans have recently made on bipartisanship is that we gave Democrats a huge win on this infrastructure bill, and this infrastructure bill has some really crazy stuff in it.
Vance says if he were senator, he wouldn't vote for the bill.
We do have infrastructure problems, but I don't think this bill actually spends the money on the things that we need, and then it spends a whole lot of additional money on things that have nothing to do with infrastructure, so it's a big mistake.
While Portman cites constant partisan gridlock as one of the main reasons he's retiring, Vance believes he'll accomplish that through strength, not negotiations.
You know, you don't need 50 good senators in the Republican Party, but if you get 10 really good senators in the Republican Party, we can break through that gridlock, we can break up the big tech companies, we can actually bring some sanity to our southern border, and we can ensure that unborn lives are protected. Like, all of these things can happen with a smarter, better Republican Party, and I think we're moving in that direction.
Moving away from bipartisanship could be a winning strategy.
They want someone who is a conservative, or more specifically, someone who is going to support and back former President Trump's agenda. You just have to look at how well Republicans have been doing statewide, how well President Trump has done in Ohio in the last 2 years, and I don't think you can call Ohio a swing state anymore.
Reporting from Capitol Hill, Abigail Robertson, CBN News.
Vance is facing Democratic Congressman Tim Ryan in the race for the open Ohio Senate seat. Ryan has served in the House since 2003, winning re-election 9 times. Polls show Ryan and Vance neck and neck. Coming up, a look at what issues matter most to voters. Finally tonight, as voters decide who to elect come November, some issues are taking precedence. A recent Monmouth University poll finds 26% of midterm voters say the economy is the most important factor in determining their vote. 25% say abortion policy, and 16% say health care is the top priority. According to the survey, immigration, gun control, and taxes round out the most important issues come November. That will do it for us. Thanks so much for watching this edition of Faith Nation. Have a great night.